Da 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 da. What's my good chair? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out, let people know I've gone live. And in the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And though I stayed on the inside literally today, I was busy. I tried to keep busy in my projects. I have this idea that, I manifest things by pushing up against what's pushing me. My sister today, she went to the hospital. She had to get some blood tests done and some x-rays or something. And yeah, she just had a quadruple or triple heart bypass. And we thought she was like rocking her recovery. And it seems that she's having some breathing issues, some inflammation, and she's having a few issues in her recovery. She is the best post op patient ever, but I think she's been overdoing it. So, in my idea, because, right, if something were to happen to my sister, I wouldn't be going on my trip in 10 days. I'm planning on doing a sabbatical that I do every single year. I take off usually for a couple of weeks. This year, I managed to take off, or I'm anticipating and expecting that I'm taking off for a week. But if something should happen and my sister does end up having some issues, I won't have any problem in canceling my trip. And that's the truth. But, right, there is that knowledge that I make things happen by pushing up against what's pushing me. So, in order to secure the fact that my sister's going to be okay, I'm going full force. I'm moving full steam ahead in planning my trip. And, it was a dark, dreary day. And sometimes those dark, dreary days, they put us in that mood of, right? Remote control the couch. Hello, Eugene. The remote control the couch, the pajamas, and just flaking out. I knew it was going to be one of those days today, and I was really looking forward to it. It was nice to have the air conditioner off uh, today and to open up the windows and get some fresh air. But I stayed busy in my trip. I wrote out. I have a book and it has all the provincial parks that I've done so far, and I hold on to gas receipts, coffee receipts, crystal receipts. Oh my goodness! I right, and then I write down all the trails that I want to go for walks on. I put historical facts in there so that when I'm doing my reviews of the parks, because I am Google Maps, Google Guide on that, and I like to do the park reviews, and I film my trips as content for my brand PrairieDodgers, because I explore the inside and I explore the outside. And you know if things don't work out for me, the one thing that I can guarantee is going on this trip that I've been doing for decades now, every September. Probably about 8 years that I've been going into Ontario, but I've always gone off and done these little wilderness adventure camping trips on my own. It was something I got back into when my marriage fell apart. It kind of brought me back to myself, it brought me back to life. It gave me that recognition of how important life is. that no matter what, I was going to create the best life for myself as I possibly could. And I wasn't woke to any of these ideas, right? But that idea and that residence that I lived with, that I truly believed in, it's so compounded now. But I understand we come up against things in life. And sometimes, right, things are going smoothly and things come up against us. But I have always found that if I didn't give back and if I pushed against what was pushing me, right, it would crack open and work out. If not what I expected, then better than what I expected. And if I push back and I keep those plans going and right, working on this trip, making sure that it happens, right, my sister's going to be perfectly fine because my family knows I wouldn't go anywhere if there were problems. So we're going to make sure there's no problems. And the way I'm going to make that happen is to continue working on towards my trip. But being that rainy, dreary day that made me feel like couch and remote control, I don't even have a TV. But that feeling of not wanting to do anything, it was there. It was so heavy. And it really did feel like I was pushing up with what was pushing me, right? But I'm sitting here now and I'm thinking about all the things that I got accomplished today. Not only did I write the itinerary out for my 4 provincial parks, I have other little adventures, and I have another series, Walk with Me, Cindy Jean, where I'm doing the trails and stuff. And I am planning on doing a 10-kilometer difficult trail up to some waterfalls in one of these parks that I'm going to. And so I had to pack for that. So I packed my backpack for that, and I put all the things that I would need for that trip, including my walking sticks. Um, and then I'm going to dig for amethyst that I do every year when I go to Ontario. I have my favorite amethyst mine, and I go every year, and I usually buy a big rock, and then I always dig for my little rocks, and I find some amazing rocks. Like I even found my dragon stone one year. I dug it up myself. It's my favorite of all my crystals. It's just a big honking piece of amethyst, but I'm hand palming it. I hand palm it every day. And it's going to take my entire life to get this polished. I mean, I could use a machine or I could go in and have it done professionally, but I want to hand palm it. It's right. I love my stones, and it gives me nice palm scratchers, and I kind of believe in the magic of my crystals, specifically the amethyst. I have hundreds of crystals. I have hundreds. There's like a little quartz crystal here. I have hundreds of crystals, but this is my favorite one. And I'm going out, and I went through all of my digging gear, and I have a lot of it. I mean, talking big sledges. I have tons of it. I have to carry it in a granny wagon. I keep it all in there. But I had to go through it because I needed my knee pads, and I needed my squirty bottles, and I needed my hand and garden tools. And I pulled those all out separate, and I put them in a bag, and I put them in a little pail because I don't want to take the big granny wagon. I don't need all that gear. That gear is when I go on the big crystal hunts like I did last year. I went to like 3 or 4 different places in digging for rocks and crystals. And oh my goodness, I brought more rocks back from Lake Superior than I did bring back crystals. And I've got them still sitting in a bag. Those I will keep for when I do get a polisher. I want a beautiful one of those big ones, rock polisher. And they are quite expensive, but I'll get it one day. I'll get it one day and then I'm going to polish all those rocks and I don't know what I'm going to do with them once they're all polished and ready to go, but I just love grabbing beautiful rocks. But the point was I stayed busy and I sat down and I took lessons and I dozed off in my chair for like 10 minutes and I had nice breakfast and I just stayed inside, played with my cat a little bit. But at the end of the day, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I got so much done for my trip, right? I got my trail bag ready. I got my uh, rock digging gear ready. I got my itinerary all written out and ready to go. Oh, and not only that, I got all my this is my wireless microphone and interview set too. So if I have a guest that they could wear one too, right? Yeah, and I charged everything up. I changed all the batteries in my lights and in my flashlights. I even have a light so I can shine them on my crystals and rocks because lots of times they fluoresce. And so I got a special fluorescent flashlight that I use for when I'm on the beaches and stuff. And I got my electrical gear all sorted out. I got my walk-in closet kind of done. I did a couple of house projects and in the end, I did quite a bit in that moving towards my goal of going on that trip, making sure, right? Because if I'm going on that trip, everything's okay. Everything will be okay. And I am determined. And I know for myself in my own experiences in working towards achieving my goals and achieving my dreams, it has always worked for me that way. In my whole life, I've never been able to achieve because I've always given up. Sorry, I've always given up in that pushback in my life. And I've always given up right away. And it's only been in about the past half a dozen years or so that I've come to the understanding and the realization that, oh my goodness, if I don't give up and I just keep going, and even when it looks hopeless, even when everything is just crashing around me and not working out the way I want, if I just keep going, something will crack open and give me what I want. And if it's not what I originally wanted, it will be much better. And, I think a lot of us, we do give up too early, right? We don't like the difficult. We don't like the mess ups and the catastrophes and the wrenches in the engines, right? So soon as they happen and we have that opportunity to go, oh, I don't think so, right? It's somebody else deal with that, or that's too much, or I don't have the time, or I'm too tired, or I can't do that. And we just give ourselves the out, right? And I'm not giving myself an out in that. I wouldn't anyway. But specifically, when my sister is not doing so great in her, in, initially she was doing great in her recovery, but I think she's overdoing it because she really wants to get better. But we got to remember, right? We are not 20 years old anymore. And she did have a very, very serious operation, and she shouldn't overdo it, right? But I'm moving with my trip. My trip is happening, and if I'm my trip is happening, then I know my sister is good. It might not make sense to everybody or anybody, but in my own experience, I know it works. I'm not somebody who gives up. I will pivot lots of times. I have pivoted. Even in my brand, I have pivoted. When I first started coming on to YouTube, initially it was just to build followers because I wanted to be on Big Brother Canada. I thought I would just rock Big Brother Canada and I would win it. And I was a big reality TV girl. And Big Brother was my absolute favorite. And I thought, oh my goodness, I would just destroy everybody in that household. And you guys, if you watch Big Brother, you know the older people are always the first to go. Physically, maybe I wouldn't have been able to hold out like the others would. That maybe I might have been on the chopping block for to be voted out. But I thought my personality and I thought, the way that I moved and I thought in my life that, that I would have a pretty good chance of making it to the end. So I applied, I auditioned for it, and in I went camping on my sabbatical, and during that sabbatical, I filmed my audition, and it was so much fun. I enjoyed doing that filming out at the lake and talking a little bit about my life and my dynamic family, and I just ended up wanting to be a YouTuber, right? And at that time, I was also an urban explorer. I was exploring abandoned farms and abandoned houses, one room schoolhouses, old abandoned churches. There's a lot of them in the prairies. And I loved histories. I loved being with Mother Nature and walking through fields and liked doing this stuff by myself. It wasn't something that I had to entertain anybody. I could just do what I wanted, and it just felt like the most absolute freedom to me. So when I had this idea of right, because the problem was I didn't have any social media. I didn't have any followers. And when you go on these, right, they want you to have a bit of a following, right? Because that's where they're going to get their word of mouth. That's how they're going to push their ratings, right? To make sure that we did have some followers and I didn't have any, right? Making that audition video was the very first time that I gave it a shot. I used my phone. I still use my phone for my filming, but I used my film. I filmed that audition video, and yeah, I said, "What can I?" Yes, the rain today. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm back on. The rain today is causing a little bit of havoc with the internet today. So I'm not blaming it on myself and my equipment. I'm just blaming it on the wet, dreary, rainy day that we're having today. So if I go in and out, don't take off. Just hang out with me for a minute. I will be right back, right? But I said, what can I do, to build a following in social media? And then I thought, well, I'm urban exploring. I didn't even know that it had a name. All I knew was I was exploring these old buildings, right? And did a little research, understood that their urban exploration was pretty popular on YouTube. And I went, oh my goodness, I'm going to be a urban explorer. And that's how I started building my brand here on YouTube. But like I said, I have pivoted. I'm not afraid to pivot. When I go for something, right? I go for something. I don't give up ever. but I will adjust. I will adapt and conquer, and I will switch it up like a 360 or a 180 degree. I will flip it upside down on its head, no problem, in order to keep my brand going. Because in the end, right, being on Big Brother didn't happen to be the plan for. Oh my goodness. And here we go again. Sorry. Um, in pivoting, I managed to keep my brand going. And I realized how much I enjoyed being a YouTube creator, right? Then I lost my car, my life fell apart, but I wasn't giving up, right? I was staying with my channel, I was staying with my brand. And even though it didn't look the same, it didn't look anything like the way I had come into it, I was still there. I'm still here. I've been on YouTube now for over 10 years, and my brand has changed so much. I have changed so much, but I never gave up. I adapted, I conquered, and I pivoted when necessary, and I flipped it upside down on its head, right? And it was the best thing that I could have done for myself. Like, I am so grateful. And I'm going to say, I just allowed myself to be pulled into it because I was not technically inclined. In fact, it took me over a year to come in front of the camera because I was so camera shy and so nervous. And because, at that point, I had limiting beliefs and some self-worth issues, a lot of self-worth issues. I didn't want to be in front of the camera. But working on YouTube and allowing myself to be pulled into the lessons, right? I knew eventually I would have to get in front of the camera. And I did. And it didn't hurt. Was I great at it? No. I'm still probably not that great at it. But I became more comfortable in front of the camera, right? And it allowed me to keep my brand, and it allowed me to stay a YouTube creator, right? And even though I'm not a big channel, I think the content that I bring to the table, right? I think it's important. And if nobody gets it in this moment or this year or in this lifetime, YouTube is forever, right? And if nothing works out the way anybody else's plan, right? Maybe my plan will be given a shot. Maybe my ideas might be taken into consideration. And maybe, who knows, it might serve at least one or two people somewheres down the road, like it served me, right? And understanding that what I push up against is pushing up against me. But if I just keep pushing, right? If I don't give up, if I don't throw my hands up in the air, if I don't quit, I just keep going. I find a way, even if I have to pivot, even after, right? Flip things upside down on its head, that it might not look the way that I had hoped, the way I had expected. But you know what? Always, always in every pivot, in every pushback, I have won. I have won because I have never given up in what I want, in those goals, those dreams, those possibilities that took me so long to truly believe that they could actually be possibilities, right? And here I am, right? Over 10 years, I have been on YouTube and I have been monetized for the most part of those 10 years. Now, I'm not making much, I'm making very little, but it's not about the money. And in fact, YouTube doesn't say, oh, Cindy, you don't have enough subscribers, you don't have enough watchers, you're not making a big enough impact. Give us back our, right? We're going to cut your monetization off, right? We're going to take you off of the partnership program. No, because I don't give up. Whatever YouTube expects from me, I do my very best to serve that, right? But understanding that I'm a small channel, I have that privilege and I have that prerogative and I have that necessity, in all honesty, because if I had rushed through it, I couldn't imagine where I would be in this moment in rushing through it, right? Because I wouldn't have learned what I have learned in that process. I wouldn't have resolved so many of those issues that I had in my life. And maybe I would be that miserable, resentful, right? Me person that I might have turned into because that was the person that I was, right? Change is change is inevitable, right? We're always changing. Even if you're doing it in baby steps, you're changing, right? And I would like to be the dictator in that, right? In partnership with those other parts of me, because I have to take that into consideration and take into consideration my family, because in the end, that's all you've got, right? And I'm not saying blood family, it might be your best friends, it might be a little network that you belong to. Maybe it's AA or, right? One of these other organizations that envelop you, right? And in them supporting you and in taking the lessons, that you get to be that little bit of support, that little bit of uplift for others. And those others, right, become your family. Doesn't necessarily have to be your blood in this moment. My family, right? That is my blood family. That's my family, because I understand that even though, right, they're not woke up to any of these ideas, they don't come into my lives. They just wouldn't get any of this. They're tolerant of it, but they don't get it. They're not interested in it. But it is my optimistic idea that maybe somewheres along the line that there might be a light bulb go off, or an idea or intuition or a what, right? But that will only happen if I don't give up, if I just keep going. And again, it's my prerogative, because this is my life now, right? This is my life. I'm not a YouTuber for, right? When I first came in, I wanted to be like Logan Paul. I was going to go viral. I was going to be a YouTube superstar. You know what? I am a YouTube superstar to myself. And that's 100% the truth. This was the biggest gift I could have given myself. And I'm not even going to say I gave this to myself, because it was given to me. It was given to me. And it was just the fact that I didn't give up, that I allowed myself to be pulled into whatever was needed to be pulled into in the moment. If you had asked me 10 years ago, and you sat me in front of this video, this podcast right now, and say, okay, sit there, listen and listen, I'd be like, oh my goodness, get me off of YouTube right now. Look what it did to me. Because I was like my sisters, right? I wouldn't have gotten it. I wouldn't have understand it. I wouldn't have had that moment of, oh, right? And I've had so many of those in the past 10 years, right? I am not the person that I was. I'm not the person that I was when I first started on YouTube. And, just to even have that idea that, right, I'm not going on this trip. If my sister gets sick, if she doesn't start feeling better in her recovery, I have no problems canceling this camping excursion that I go on. I call it my sabbatical because I just devour mother nature. I'm just like a vacuum cleaner. I'm just out there by myself and my family thinks I'm sorry you guys. My family just thinks I'm crazy for being out there on my own, right? But I'm safe and I've been doing it for so long, right? I've become a little bit of an expert in that. But we all understand, even the experts don't work out, right? We know those mountain climbers on Everest are still on Everest 60 years later, right? We just had a gentleman from Norway who was uh, he was doing an expedition and he was out in the wilderness by himself with his two dogs and he was an expert and they found him last week and he had drowned in trying to cross one of the rivers up north in Manitoba and they had a big search party and he was an expert in his field. So we do know that, even the experts aren't truly indestructible, right? And I keep that in mind. But, right, in my baby steps, in my never giving up, in just keeping going, right, that I understand that anything that I come up against, and it's pushing up against me, if I don't give up, if I just keep going, it doesn't mean going in there, right, punching it out and, right, giving it everything I have. I just have to keep going. I just have to push up with what's pushing up against me, and it will break open and it will be realized. And I didn't realize that 10 years ago, right? I was a giver upper. Oh, guaranteed I was a giver upper. Anything that pushed up against me, I would just be like, okay, I give up. I don't have the time. I don't have the effort. I don't have the patience. I'm done. Right? And that's just not who I am anymore. Okay, you guys, tonight we're just going to grab a card here. If I go out where the weather really kind of sucks outside today, so if I kind of phase out, stick with me. It's a weather issue tonight, and um, and if you do happen out, I hope you're having an amazing night, an amazing day, you guys. Okay, here we go. These are just 54 powerful words. Usually I end my live and my podcast with just pulling a card. We just go into it for a couple of minutes and then we call it a night. Sometimes it's a couple of minutes. My intent that it's a couple of minutes. It doesn't always work out the way. Okay, here's the card we're going to pull tonight. Oh my goodness, you guys. It always happens this way. I don't know why. It's kind of like a little magical the way it works out. But the word we got tonight was commitment. Commitment is your word to see it through, right? Never give up. You commit to it. And that's one thing, about my word. I have let lots of people down, not always intently, right? Not with intent. Lots of times, if you borrow money, right? And this is a Bob Proctor thing. You borrow money and you intend to pay it back, but those funds don't roll in and right? Oh, I'm so sorry. right? I say, oh, don't worry about it. And you feel bad, right? And you feel bad because you gave your word. Lend me $20, I'll pay you back on payday, right? And then you don't pay it back, and then you let somebody down, and you more importantly, you've let yourself down, right? The one thing about commitment that I've done is when I want to get things done, I've always committed to myself, right? Commit to myself, because in the end, right, I won't let myself down, right? I will always keep that word to myself. And that's where my self-worth lies, right? I don't want to let people down. So I commit to myself not to do that. I commit to my trip every September, and I work towards that, and I don't give up in that, right? Commitment is your word to see it through, right? You say it. It's a stamp. You stamped it. That stamp of approval, that agreement with yourself. Never give up. You just keep going. You commit to it. You see it through, right? Never give up, and just see the miracle of what happens. It might not look like what you had committed to, but if it isn't, I can guarantee you almost that it will be better 100%. Okay, you guys, that was pretty neat, isn't it? Just tied in nicely with never give up. I guess that's what I'll call this one, never give up. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer.